what we're doing tonight is having an open community meeting. And it's the first time KnoxREIA, Knox Real Estate Investors, has sponsored a neighborhood meeting anywhere. So I thought people involved thought Parkridge would be a good place to start. And in our monthly meetings, the Knox Real Estate Investor Association, KnoxREIA, is a group of investors who come to a monthly meeting, almost like AA, and we talk about real estate in the way that investors think about real estate. And the first thing that we want people that are new to come into the meetings to think about, and it's what neighborhoods are all the time wanting to think about, is what does the future look like? So investors make their money in the future. Home buyers are investors who are hoping to make money in the future. And so we start every meeting with a disclaimer. And everybody should be able to read this, and you've got a copy, because what I want people to do and to understand is that I'm in the real estate, my name is Victor Jernigan again, and I'm in the real estate business to make a profit. The Knox Real Estate Investors is owned by GIB Incorporated, which is a real estate brokerage firm in the state of Tennessee, and it's organized to make a profit. That's the goal. You don't always make money in real estate. The program that we're doing tonight is purely for informational purposes only. It's purely for education. Nobody's going to give investment advice or who should take investment advice. Always absolutely positively consult with professionals before you make any real estate decision. As I say in our meetings all the time, investing involves risk, tax implications, and the possibility of financial loss. Real estate investing is the only way that the majority of people in America can create generational wealth, if you do it correctly. If you do it incorrectly, you create generational poverty, which is the reason we say never ever be in a hurry. Only you can decide when to make an act. Buying real estate is one of the very last things that cannot be done by committee, because somebody has to sign the documents as the buyer. So it's important that you never take anything as a fact. Don't take anything that I say as a fact. The reason we set up like this with tables is so people can take notes. We want you to take notes on everything that I say. Go home, Google it, go to ehal.com, about.com, or any of the other websites, and make the effort to prove what I'm talking about is wrong. The more you do that kind of research, the better neighbor you will be, the better homeowner you will be, the better investor you will be. And it's really important to understand that you never need to be in a hurry to buy real estate. And this is where Parkridge comes in, because I end every presentation the same way. Don't ever be in a hurry to buy and sell real estate. It goes on 360, 24/7, 365. We've been doing it exactly the same way in the United States since the panic of 1893. So, I don't get on Facebook very much. Maybe 10 minutes. How people have time to post on Facebook, I always amazed. So, but I've gotten on Facebook a couple of times to see that there's some people who don't have a basic understanding of how real estate investing works, who have different views of where the neighborhood should go, and different dynamics that are going on in the community. This presentation is from our real estate meeting on the 10th, so 3 weeks ago. And it's following the basic outline that we had in that meeting, so everybody can sort of get a feel for what we talk about in the meetings. Because again, real estate investing is about making money in the future. So what happens is, the topic was, every political decision involves real estate. There is no decision that is ever made in the world of politics, it doesn't make any difference what it is, that doesn't involve a piece of dirt. Somebody is making a decision to do something somewhere or to do something else somewhere else. But there is always real estate involved. And as property owners, or people who are living in a community, that are renting in the community, what is happening with the politics in the community really begins to have a really serious impact over a 3 to 5, 7 year period of time in the future. But the first thing we're going to do, this is free. If anybody gets anything printed, you get any kind of school supplies, you buy anything at Office Max or Office Depot. Right now, you can do it. You can make a note and do it any time. But if you text KnoxREIA, KNOXREIA, to 555-888, you come back with a little card that is a Office Depot, Office Max store purchasing card. And the materials that we printed up tonight, it was $180. After we used the store purchasing card, it was $63 out the door. So it's free, there's no gimmick to it. It's something that everybody should use, and if you, as I say, if you've got kids and you need school supplies, it's a great thing to have. It should come back with just a little card, KnoxREIA up in the corner, SPC number. So, KnoxREIA, 555-888. So, in the meeting, we go over the statistics of what's going on in the dynamic to help investors understand how they can begin to use the information when they're either making a decision to buy a piece of property, or if they're a real estate agent talking about a listing, or if they're a real estate agent who already has a listing and they want to counsel a seller on whether they should take the offer or not. So most everything that I provide in every meeting is free to everybody. The information is available. Is available to everybody. This comes off the MLS website, so you can download this yourself. What I do is provide the thought process behind how you use the information. So the market update, and I've been using this every month this year, there are simply not enough houses anywhere in the Knoxville metro area. So in August, the end of August, there were 5,979 listings, down about 600 listings since June, listed in the marketplace. There's 2,300 pending sales that are separate from what's listed, but that's also down just a little bit from June. So what happens is 46%, or 2,200 sales, 2,231 sales, and 46% of those sales close in under 30 days. Everybody see that right there, closed in under 30 days. What's also important is that 23% of all the sales, over 800 sales, were cash transactions. Now 90%, 95% of all cash transactions are investors who are buying property, right? So 25% in round numbers of every sale this year has been to an investor somewhere. Now, I've modified this a little bit, but in 2011, the median sales price across the year of all housing sold in the Knoxville MLS. 2011, it was $135,000. In 2011, I use a service, Local Market Monitor. If anybody wants to write that down, it's a paid service. The Local Market Monitor provides the information that about 2,000 banks and credit unions use to value their own real estate portfolios. And in 2011, they had estimated that the equilibrium price in Knoxville was $170,000. So we were $40,000 about where they thought the market should be. Every year that things have gone forward, it's continued to move up. In 2016, they said the equilibrium price was $196,000, and we were still at a price of $159,000. So what this is that you have these people who are watching everything that's going on in Knoxville, what our job growth is, what the job growth in the metro area is, what the job growth in East Tennessee is. They're looking at how many housing starts, how many new bank formations, because if you have new banks that are forming, you have more desire to lend money. So you wind up with a situation that at the end of 2000, so right now we're projecting a median price this year of $175,000. So in 6 years, in simple math, the price has gone up the median price, half below, half above, has gone up $40,000. Today, 69% of all the listings are higher than $175,000. it's entirely possible that next year we're going to be at a median price of about $205 to $210. Local market monitor says we need to be where the opportunity is up to 218,000 median number. So if you're an investor and you're watching the market, and you're watching what's going on in the MLS, and you're watching what's being listed, you can see that there is the opportunity for properties to continue to go up in value, and we would still be under where comparable markets to Knoxville are in the United States. And the reason that that's important is if you're a homeowner and you're thinking about selling, do you want to sell now? Do you want to sell a little bit later in the future? Is now a good time to sell? If you're thinking about renting property, then you've got to get a feel for where the rental market is. I can absolutely get really wonkish into the weeds of this stuff. So if I get sidetracked, there is no agenda and no topic. I'm just talking on slides. Anybody at any time interrupt with any question that involves real estate. It doesn't make any difference to me, whatever it is. So what's happening is investors are pouring into the market because there is no new house construction. The median household income in Knoxville is about $52,000. That pretty much limits you to a new construction house against that value of about $250,000, $230,000, $250,000, something in that range. So right now, it's almost impossible to get a new home under construction in the county for under $200,000. It's impossible in the city to develop a new subdivision for new lots with housing under $300,000. So on day one, there will be no new construction of any consequence coming forward. There's just no capital to do it, and there's nowhere you can build it because of the way the banking system works under the Dodd-Frank rules. Now, investors have a different situation. So if you're a builder, this is, we get into the weeds, but it impacts communities like Parkridge and South Knoxville extensively because you have an existing housing stock that is in general valued under $275,000. And again, in just round numbers, 275 is the sort of a mental number that it's easy to keep in your mind as to what the FHA lending limit is. So if you have a 620, maybe there's a lending officer in the room that can correct it, but I think if you have a 625 or 640 credit score, you can get an FHA loan with 3.5% down, and with closing costs and everything, you'll be in for about 5%. So for about $12,000 all in, you can buy a new home, or a home, any home, right? So what happens is, right now in Knoxville, under $250,000, in July, there was a 90-day supply of houses on the MLS. Now it's under 60 days, and if you drop down to $175,000, it's a 17-day, when I did the meeting, it was a 17-day supply of housing, below $175,000.
What do you mean by 17-day supply? Does
So
that mean
at the current sales rate, on the previous month, everything that's listed would be sold in the next 17 days. So when you hear people, and that's important to understand, because when you hear people talk about, man, I tried to make an offer on that house, but it was sold before I got there. I thought about buying that house, but it was under contract, and I didn't get a chance to even look at it. That house sold so fast, I was driving across town, I called my wife, and we never got to get inside the door. And the reason is, there's no inventory. And over the last 6-7 years, since the bottom of the recession in 2011, you wind up with, you have more and more and more people who are qualified to buy. They've begun to work out some student debt, they've begun to get some savings put back in place, people who used to own a home, who lived in an apartment, and now they're wanting to go back and buy a house. And so they've been accumulating some money. So there are lots of buyers that are out there. So what is happening is that, and again, I don't want this to be some kind of lecture. Anybody can interrupt, but thank you for the question. The thought process is that as buyers are accumulating more cash and fewer homes are on the market, people who want to buy a $150,000 $30,000 house, they can't get to the door. It's getting sold. It's getting sold. They make an offer to buy the $130,000 house at $125,000, and the house sold in a bidding war for $140,000. And they do that about 8 or 10 times, maybe 12 times. And all of a sudden they say, you know, we need to call mom or dad, or we need to save another few $1,000s because we're going to bid $150,000. We're not going to wait around. If we see something listed for $130,000, we're going to bid $150,000, and we're going to own that house. And for investors, that's extremely important to understand, because that is what creates the opportunity to have repaired value in a home. You buy a home that needs repairs. The people who are buying a $130,000, $150,000, $200,000 house do not have the money to buy the home and do the repairs before they move in. It almost never happens under $250,000. So you wind up with this feeding frenzy that is occurring under the $200,000 mark. And it only accelerates over time because you have more people coming to the Knoxville market. Is everything making sense so far? There's going to be a test at the end. I'm going to grade everybody. So, in Parkridge, I've seen on Facebook pages that people say that Parkridge is being targeted because there's people, we buy houses, signs, and there's letters that go out to people, we'd like to buy your house. Well, let me tell you, Parkridge isn't alone. They're in every single neighborhood in the greater Knoxville metro area. I mean, I know people that have got 400 or 500 signs that they put out over the course of a couple of months. I know people that do thousands of letters, want to sell, they're called want to sell letters. Do you want to sell your home? The market's been moving up. Would you like to know what your home is worth?
I got one of those last week.
You'll get one every week. So they go, so it depends on who's buying. These all come off of a mail list. They're all form letters. Anybody in this room can buy the mail list. It depends on what you want to buy. There's all kinds of mail lists you can buy. We have a program with the KnoxREIA group that you can pay $75 a month, and it's just unbelievable the information you have from CRS data systems. So you can create any list you want of any number of people you want, how long people have lived in their house, how old you think they are by how long they've lived in the house, and send focus letters. And it's all point and click. There's no targeting going on for Parkridge other than the fact that there's a lot of energy in the Parkridge community, which we'll get into in just a minute. But the want to sell letters are something you can buy. You can have all kinds of stationery. It's all on a computer. It's all off of a mail list and off of zip codes. This real estate sign, real estate investor seeks trainee, $100,000 a year, call or text. I am going to do a YouTube video calling that guy out. I am going to do that. I threatened to do it at the meeting, and Brian reminded me. This is my friend Brian DeLay over here. And the other one, so that was at the exit of that was the Cedar Bluff off-ramp for Cedar Bluff Road, off of Interstate 40. And this, I buy houses any condition, 866, Rick buys. I used that sign, and there were 4 or 5 people in the REIA meeting that knew this guy, Rick. I don't know who he is. But that was in front of the Office Max, Office Depot on Kingston Pike, where these flyers come, where the handouts come from. So they just put it right there. There's a Hardee's right there. So as you're pulling out, you see his sign. So they're everywhere. And the reason is that they're everywhere is if you can get in front of a deal today, there's probably somebody who will pay you to get out of the way. And in real estate, there's a term called wholesaling. And you'll hear that term used. The real term is you're assigning a contract. Into the weeds. Real estate investors monetize information. I don't do anything with a hammer, a saw. I'm not allowed to use tools. I'm not, as you can see from my arm, I'm going to be barred from throwing the ball with my dog. So you wind up with a situation that I just pay attention to information, and I invest capital where I believe that information is leading me. Investing in real estate is when somebody buys a piece of property and they're going to buy that property because they have a better idea as to how to do the repairs to that house. They've got an all-new thought process that 35 people have looked at the home, it's completely condemned. I've got an idea that's going to fix this house, and I'm going to be able to get it done cheaper than anybody else. It's kind of like, name that song in 5 tunes, name that song in 4 tunes, right? So you have people who are investors who are buying houses because they're going to work on the houses themselves. I can't buy that house. In Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's a broad statement, but in general, if the repairs are $30,000 or less, an investor like myself has no chance to buy the house. Zero. Because there are so many people, like Tyrone right here, who is, by the way, great electrician. If you need electrical work, right there's the guy. So you wind up with a situation that a guy who wears a tool belt and 2 of his friends can go together and buy that house, and on $30,000 in repairs to most properties, less than $10,000 of it is material. So I've got to hire labor. I've got to employ labor. Labor deserves a profit if I'm hiring them, right? So it winds up that it's almost impossible. So over time, I only look for properties that have been on the market for more than 101 days, which means they've got a problem. And therefore the repairs are most likely more than $50,000. That's my model. Every investor has their own model. And I talk about what I do and where I invest at every REIA meeting and where I think other people should be investing because of changes that are being done in the political environment and or zoning laws which are being created, right, which are going to drive value in the future. I don't care under any circumstance what something sold for 60 days ago. That value trap notion of being able to say, well, my house has got to be worth this because that house was worth X, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? If they're going to close the middle school and all of a sudden my kids are being bused for an hour in each direction, right? If that might be important to some of the people who have kids at Holston Middle, for example. So what happens is, all of a sudden the property in Gibbs becomes worth more money because now the kids aren't going to be bused. You've got a high school kid and your middle school can go to school together. Your high schooler can take you to middle school and you don't have to come on a bus for an hour in the morning to come down to Holston Hills. Right? The decision to build Gibbs Middle School increased all the property values in Gibbs and decreased all the values because of uncertainty around who's going to go to Holston Middle. Because people didn't know whether the kids were going to be bused or not, or whether Holston Middle was going to be closed. Right? So, again, what we talk about is paying attention to what's going on. And so much that I've seen on Facebook is that people are saying, you've got this going on, or you've got this going on, or somebody's got an agenda, or somebody else has got an agenda, or people are trying to take advantage of other people. And let me say, the market is what's driving everything in Knoxville, Tennessee. You can see just from the tracking of our median sales price over the last 5 years. You've got investors running everywhere. Nobody's paying thousands of dollars a month to send letters out unless it's working. Nobody's paying thousands of dollars a month to put signs up unless it's working. So, I failed PowerPoint, by the way. I saw a PowerPoint presentation today that was just like really cool. It moved, it opened up, slides came in from this way and that way. So, we've got all this dynamic going on, and urban changes everything. And the reason urban changes everything is that Florida has 23 million people. We have about 800,000 people a year moving to Florida. But there's still, in the Keys, there's still people without power. And in Naples, there are people that live in Naples who are not going to be in their house for a year or maybe 2 years. So, just as a broad brush, open question, it's only give you the difference between people who are living in Houston after Hurricane Harvey and the people who are living in Florida after Irma. If you just make it a broad generalization. The broad generalization, in my view, is that people who live in Houston work in Houston, and they're going to stay in Houston. People who live in Florida they've got choices. They've got money, they've got time, they've got choices. And they can choose to live wherever they want to live. And as I was coming back up the interstate from a meeting in Chattanooga, the second day after the evacuation notice came in, I told the story at the REIA meeting. It wasn't the first Range Rover that passed me, or the second Range Rover that passed me. It was the third Range Rover, and then the Escalade. And then here comes a Ferrari. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Every car that passed me for about 15 minutes had the 3 digits to the left of the comma in its price tag. Brian pointed out that they were all going to the Highlands of North Carolina to check on their guns and the cash. But the point is that they do not need to go back to Florida. And I'm going to say there are going to be a lot of people who are not going to go back to Florida. I know of real estate agents who have shared stories with me that have said that people who came up here evacuating from Irma are already buying houses and telling their friends to buy houses. And one of them made a comment at the closing table, which was, I'm going ahead and buying now because there's going to be hundreds of people that I know that are going to be leaving Naples. Now, maybe they come to Knoxville. I make the over-under number. Let's just make it simple. Over the next 2 years, let's say between people that leave Florida and people that don't go to Florida, you've got 1 million people. 500,000 that move out, 500,000 that don't go down there. So is the easy number for us to say 20,000 people that are going to be moving into this market? I mean, that's a made-up number. It could be 1,000 people. But it's easy to say 20,000 people over 2 years that are going to choose to stay here or come here and be safe. Because this is the operative thing right here. And this is what everybody, if you don't come away with anything in the meeting, come away with this. You've heard 1,000 times in real estate, it's location, location, location. Right? Come on, please say yes. It is really, people invest in safety. And this is really important to understand as an investor, as a homeowner and a renter who's about to get a rent increase, right? Or maybe your rent's coming up and you want to negotiate for a decrease. Because without exception, when people perceive that they physically or their children are no longer safe, they will move. Absolutely, positively, they will move. More importantly, those who can move immediately, and those who can organize their lives to move in the next year, they move in the next year. So after they look for safe, and the reverse is true, the converse is true, in that people, when they invest, they may not say it, but subconsciously what they're looking for is to buy in a neighborhood that they perceive to be the safest place for them to invest, for their own safety, for their money to be safe, and their future, for their money to grow and their children to grow. So the three things that you really are looking for is a place that is safe for the individual, a place that is safe for the money to be invested, and a place that is safe with a future that is growing. Because money's made in appreciation of real estate, not the investment in real estate. You can make money with the investment, but it's the appreciation and the reduction of debt that actually creates wealth. So you wind up with 17, if we just pick the number, the natural growth that the Metropolitan Planning Commission says is we have about 1% natural growth in the greater Knoxville market, about 8,500 people a year. The things that I'm reading say that that's 2,000 or 3,000 people under what is actually coming into the marketplace. And now you've got Irma coming, which could bring 10,000 people a year more. And we've got 5,000 to 7,000 new jobs that are coming online from June of this year to December of next year. Now, everybody heard about Denso, right? Denso is adding 1,000 new jobs in one county. So you got Alcoa Highway, right? Pellissippi Parkway. On one end down there is Denso. They're adding 1,000 jobs at an average of $26 an hour And all the jobs are going to be added between June, the bulk of the jobs are going to be added between June and December, and then there's going to be 200 or 300 that are added in 2019. The uranium processing facility, how many people are familiar with that going on in Oak Ridge? This is the biggest untalked about project I've ever been around. It's the largest construction project in the history of the state of Tennessee. There are 2,400 construction jobs being created in Oak Ridge from June of this year through December of last year, and the reason is their goal is to be 100% under construction in January of 2019. Now, as an aside from this, those jobs, again, picking a number, are $80,000 a year jobs, and nobody who has those, or is going to have those jobs, or has those jobs, lives in Oak Ridge, Anderson County, Knox County, Blount County, Loudoun County, or Jefferson County. They're all going to be coming from somewhere else. About $80,000 a year is what the construction jobs are going to pay.
Yes.
Yeah, for the uranium processing facility. So, as an aside, and these numbers come from, again, I'm not telling you anything. I told you at the beginning of the meeting, take nothing I say as a statement of fact. Your goal is to prove me wrong. Please. So that number comes from the Tennessee Department of Economic Development, which projected how many other thousands of jobs that would be created in each incremental 10-mile ring around the uranium processing facility. Now, if you go backwards north from Oak Ridge, we're going to say that most of the people are going to want to live south of Oak Ridge, on this side of the river, right? And I'm saying anything against Oliver Springs. Oliver Springs is a really nice place. I'm just saying that maybe they're going to come this way. And so what happens is you've got families that are going to be relocating that are going to make somewhere as a family income, to pick a number, and I'm just making the number up because it's easy to do, $110,000 to $120,000 a year. So all of a sudden, you've got a whole group of wealthy people that are coming to town. You've got workers in Denso making $26 an hour. Now, they may be here in town. Denso workers could come from this area. But if they're coming from this area, they've left a job somewhere else, and somebody's got to pay somebody else to take that job. So right now, according to Governor Haslam's office, when they did the announcement for Denso, there's a 1% unemployment rate in Knox County. I was with somebody the other day who took a picture of "We're hiring" sign that somebody posted out in front of their business. And what was really interesting, he told me that it was just like when you buy a new car and you're really excited about getting a new car, and then you get on the road and it looks like everybody's driving the same car. He took that picture, and it seemed like everything, everywhere he went, everybody had signs out, "We're hiring, apply now." Starting position, $10. Starting position, $15, depending on what it was, right? So we've got this real strong wage inflation that's occurring in Knoxville. So people who were making $35,000, $40,000 a year are now making $50,000. So if you're making $50,000, what price house do you buy? There you go, $230,000, $250,000, right? So not only do you have the people that are living here wanting to buy more and saving up more money, the people who've been looking for years because they've already got jobs that's $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, and they're looking to buy. But now you've got all these other people that are making more money, and so they want to say, I want to move out of this rental. It's a really nice rental. We've been here 3 years. But let's buy a house. And they want to buy a house. So what happens is you look at how this job creation is occurring and the ripple effect that it's having on housing. And you compare that to new construction starts. You compare that to new subdivision developments that are being created. And that's all easy to find. It's all available on the MPC, from the MPC. Anybody can get it. MPC, got a phenomenal MPC that is overworked and underpaid. So you wind up with a situation where the demand for housing is far exceeding what can be built as new construction. So what is left? Existing housing stock. The existing housing stock, right? What does Parkridge have? Existing housing stock. Holston Hills, Chilhowie Hills, Lincoln Park, everything out Sevier Avenue in South Knox. We'll get into that in just a minute. So everybody together so far? This is the market dynamics that is impacting everything. So, and the reason that this is important is the topic is every political decision is a real estate decision, right? So, I'm thinking, again, anybody can ask any question anytime. So the rest of this meeting involves politics. It's, so this was the sign that was used, the same slide as last month, about political decisions that have been made in different places. The city of Dayton spent $2 million. They bought 87 acres is an important number in this slide. That's where they use it, of course. 87 acres. The city of Dayton spent $2 million. They enlarged the park. They spent another $2 million developing their business park. They landed KnoxREIA Tires. It's a 400 jobs, $360 million plant in Dayton, Tennessee. So as investors, I'm telling people they should go to Dayton because they're going to add, they've got room for another plant the size of this, and KnoxREIA is saying that they're going to add 1,000 jobs before it's over with. So you wind up with, that's 2017. In 2013, the city council implemented the INSKIP small area plan, which was a restriction against future development of property in the INSKIP neighborhood. What's interesting about that is that there were about 400 acres that were zoned by right for up to 12 units an acre. The neighborhood didn't want any more apartments, so the people who owned, now I have no idea what I'm saying this is true, but this is my view. If I had owned apartments in INSKIP, I would have been 100% in favor of passing a moratorium so that there would never be more apartments in INSKIP. So the city, by fiat, took away the right to develop the property for any greater density than it was already developed. So if you were a homeowner and you owned a lot on which you could have built a fourplex, but you only got one house, all that can ever be built on that house, on that property is one house. They took away the potential of 4,000 housing units in INSKIP with one sweep because the INSKIP homeowners didn't want any more apartments. We have enough of those people in our neighborhood. The reason that I'm sensitive to that is that when INSKIP was actually formed, I've got the newspaper clippings from the 48, 49, when the people who lived in INSKIP had an emergency meeting because somebody was going to buy the 100-acre farm that is INSKIP today, right? And divide it into 4 lots and 4 lots per acre. And nobody should be allowed to develop property at 4 lots per acre. It's just not the way Knoxville is done, and it's going to ruin the aesthetic of Knoxville. So in 1948, everybody that lived out there had an emergency meeting to try to stop the rezoning of the property. You know, obviously it didn't work. The houses get built, fast forward, and now the people that are out there don't want any more apartments because they don't want the property subdivided anymore. But because there can be you're on public transportation, you're on one interstate exit, 2 interstate exits from downtown, you're 15 minutes from the university and heavy traffic. It's on public transportation. It's a great neighborhood, great location, no chance for future development. So what happens is there's no incentive for people who own apartments to raise and redo and modify and keep the apartments current. There's no incentive for people who own rental property because there are no market forces which will make them keep the properties up because the people want to live there because they work on Broadway, they work on Merchants, they work at a hospital out north. There's no reason to because no competitor can come in. So what's happening in INSKIP is that property values over the last 3 years have begun to decline. the housing market, the rental markets continue to increase. The housing market has been stable or declining in price. So you wind up with the next one. Knoxville City Council rejects, this just happened in September. The City Council voted to reject the FedEx zoning. Everybody know where Midway Road is? Everybody in this room should know where Midway Road is because it's the last exit out of Knoxville on Interstate 40. It's where the Knox County Business Park was scheduled to go 8 years ago. Knox County has invested $20 million or $30 million out there on land that they keep running into a buzzsaw and trying to develop. Across the street from that, on the Midway exit, there's a piece of property that's been zoned commercial forever, and FedEx came into town and they were going to build the same size facility in Knoxville that they have in Nashville. They were saying that it was going to be $25 million in new construction, and it was going to create 200 new full-time jobs. The people who live out there don't want that interstate exit to be developed under any circumstance. They protested, and the city council voted to deny FedEx the zoning, and so FedEx didn't get it. I don't know that they've given up on that property, but where I think FedEx is going to go is out there next to H.T. Hackney in Roane County, which puts that much more pressure on the west end on Loudoun County and the west end of Knox County. People who live in Parkridge who could have been easy out there, 12 minutes from here, 15 minutes that direction, could have applied for a job. It could have had enormous impact on ancillary jobs, because every job that's created that pays $20 an hour creates between 1 and 3 other jobs in the local economy.
Do you know any of the issues that the people out there on the Midway?
They don't want it developed. Period. End of story.
Hackney, actually.
It's karst topography because there's sinkholes in the area. There's the interstate exit isn't designed to handle that kind of traffic, even though the money's already in place to rebuild the entire exit. There's not enough power, even though there's KB substations in place. So they've been against it because they don't want that intruding into the rural character, the last rural area in Knox County. Again, I'm biased in this conversation, so everybody should look up Midway Road and make their own judgments. If you can't see my bias coming through, please. So also at the September meeting, and I pointed this out because the September meeting, the city council approved, and it just went on through, and if Del Lopi hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have caught it. They approved $400,000 for a matching grant of $1.5 million from the federal government for a transportation study and for the creation of the Greenway walking trail. Del Lopi asked, was that pure construction cost or was that soft cost included? And it turns out that the city has now obligated themselves to $1,500,000 in soft costs, plus the $400,000 for a grant that's going to come from the federal government from a department which may not exist in 24 months, right? But the city has committed itself to the study of building a greenway from Middlebrook Pike through the tank farm, out First Street, out to where the Victor Park is.
Third.
It's 1.5 miles long. I'm sorry?
Third
Creek, thank you. So, and the reason that's important, and I do this at all the REIA meetings, I don't do it in every meeting, but I do them at least 5-month meetings, 6 meetings a year, where I talk about people should begin to pay attention because in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to really begin to drive value. And so what happens is, there is a 100% correlation between increasing walkability score and property values increasing. As soon as a neighborhood, I tell everybody as investors, as soon as you hear that a walking trail is funded, buy anything in that neighborhood. I don't care whether it's listed and you think it's at full value, buy it. Because once that walking trail is built, property values will go up between 8 and 15%. It takes about a year or a year and a half for that to happen. It's another whole conversation about money and finance, but you buy as the walkability score goes up. And so, when you look at this, and you look at where Victor Ash Park is, and you look at where to buy, where I told people that they needed to buy was the Westview neighborhood. And Keith Avenue runs down the middle of it. And now we're getting into the real impact, the two tectonic plates that are rubbing against each other.
Tectonic.
Tectonic, thank you very much. I knew I was in that word somewhere. How did people spell anything before you had that red squiggly line on it? So this is South Knoxville. This is the first district. The second greenway that was approved was the Mary Vestal Greenway, which connects to Fort Dickerson Park and all through here. Now, in the back of the room, Joe, hold your hand up. This is the guy that dreamed up this project 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Well, I started dreaming about 20 years ago, but the vision plan and the implementation plan were dated 2006, they're 11 years old. The regulating plans for form-based zoning is 1 year younger, 2007.
So you wind up with a situation that the reason that this is important is that these two projects right here, so you've got the Imes Park, which everybody knows everybody's converting into biking trails, converting into hiking trails. So first value, walking trail. Second value, unobstructed view of a park. Golf course views have better views, lake views have better views, are worth more money. Golf course views are worth more money, right? Unobstructed view of a park. So you wind up with the city has transferred millions and millions and millions of dollars in value to this market by creating a place that people want to live. Now what happens is, the first district, and everybody should have one of these, they're printed up in color thanks to the, and if you didn't text KnoxREIA to 555-888, it's not my fault, right? So this just gives everybody an idea, and Parkridge is just this little bitty area right here in the 6th district. This is where the 6th district all goes to. Burlington's out here. Everybody can see what's going on. I spent 4 hours 3 weeks ago driving around on Friday afternoon with a little guy looking to find something in the Colonial Village, Lake Forest area after you go past the Stone Road and go up over the hill in this area right here in the 1st district. 4 hours. We found 3 houses with signs. This is absolutely true here. We found 3 houses with signs. All were sold in less than 72 hours on market. All 3 houses had were 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no garage. They'd all been remodeled, and they had sold between $120 and $140 a square foot. There was one new construction home that had paid $25,000 for the lot. They built the house a little bigger than what they'd originally planned, so they had it listed for $200,000. It's under construction, and they closed the contract at $215,000. So it's not Parkridge it's being picked on. It's not East Knoxville, right? It is the market dynamic that everybody's looking for a place to live that they can afford. And so those houses in down here are the same situation. They're 1,250. They're the classic. You see them everywhere in Knoxville. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, bath and a half, rancher, all built in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And people are they're paying 1,250 square feet, and they're paying $150,000 for it, $120 a square foot. And if they need to bring another $3,000 or $5,000 in cash to close it, they'll do that, right? So now we have in the 6th district, it's Wynn and Jennifer, and this is the existing historic area right here, and this is the expansion area right here. There are 558 new parcels, and I'm estimating the market value. This is my estimate of value. Between $40 and $50 million in value that are going to be included in the new expansion overlay. And it is more than 87 acres in size. And I just saw that and I thought, man, that's pretty interesting. David, Tennessee buys 87 acres next to an industrial park and creates $360 million in construction, 450 jobs, going to be 1,000 jobs in the near future. Knoxville taking 87 acres and looking to put on a zoning overlay that'll restrict the development forever. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but these are the facts. And again, Google. Joe's project along the South Waterfront was a great vision, and the people who have bought it are really developing everything along the water. So if you're on the Henley Street Bridge and you go across the bridge on Henley Street, to the left is what these two buildings are that are being built right here. There's a big park that comes in. Joe, what's the name of that street in front of
Little plaza.
The plaza. It's the plaza. Plaza. I can't think of that little street right there. The old hospital. The old
Is that Baptist?
Yeah.
Baptist
That's
Hospital?
where Baptist was, you know.
Yeah, this is where Baptist used to be. The
Regal.
Regal building is right here. So this is 303 apartments that are all market rate. The market rate for these apartments, I think, will be, you'll see the one-bedroom units at about $900 to $1,000 a month. The three-bedroom, two-bath will be somewhere around $2,200 to $2,400 a month.
Could you go back one slide?
Sure.
When you say 87 acres, new, define new.
Everything that's in purple.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
There's houses, or they're going to build houses.
It's all developed. Everything in here is developed.
Okay.
It's all developed.
They're just going to rezone it?
They're going to rezone it and put in the same type of historic overlay that is on the part of Parkridge now. It's got the black signs.
Yeah.
So the historic zoning overlay is, I'll be happy to answer any questions on historic zoning. But the reason that it's important is that it's already developed. There's already housing on it, people are already living there. And I'm estimating the current market value of the houses to be between 40 and 50 million.
So if I just bought a lot today in that area, how do you live here?
You'd make money. And if you've been to one of our REIA meetings, the reason that this is important is that we started telling people to buy in Parkridge almost 4 years ago. So we've been telling people to go to Parkridge and buy for 4 years. I told people to begin buying in South Knoxville in 2013. At the end of 2013, I wrote an article about that, why South Knoxville was the best place in Knoxville to buy property for the next 7 years. Anything you buy in 2014 will double in price by 2017, and I think it more than double, as a matter of fact. So, as a point of reference, I know nobody in this room knows me, but I've been in the real estate business forever. I'm old. I did my first transaction when I was 21. Over the years, I did the location analysis and selected the properties and acquired the properties for about 50 Weigel stores. I would buy stores for Weigel that would not be built on for 15 years after he purchased the property. I did location, I've done bank branches for local banks. I've done where they have wanted to know where growth was going to be, or they've been wanting to buy property that couldn't be bought. On projects that I have acquired and rezoned and sold for development, there's about $250 million in residential construction in the Knoxville area that I'm directly responsible for. About $150 million in commercial construction. And I only say that as a point of reference that when I say that your goal is to prove me wrong, it will make you a better investor if you can. So to your point, if you bought lots in Parkridge 2 years ago, you would have been increasing in value, probably double or triple the money that you would pay for the lot 3 or 4 years ago. So you wind up with, this is on the left side of Henley, back to Henley Street Bridge. This all gets to be important. The left side is, this is what's there. On the right side, so here's the Henley Street Bridge. This is all about apartments. There's Regal, that's the Gay Street Bridge. This on the left side is going to be a 134 unit student housing complex, 450 bedrooms. They expect it to be 100% occupied. They expect the apartments to be 100% occupied. This is Home Suites by Hyatt. It's 120, I think it's 120 rooms. That could be wrong. But it's a brand new hotel on the south side of the river. because there are so many people traveling to Knoxville to go biking on the bike trails, and they have no place to stay. 85 or 90% of all the Airbnb rentals in Knoxville are from downtown Knoxville south of the river. So there's going to be 3 or 4 restaurants that will be developed here. There's a retail area. There's the plaza that Joe was talking about that connects to the Riverwalk. It's a $160 million project, and they got $40 million from the city of Knoxville in TIFs, pilots, and direct grants. So if you're in commercial construction, you lessen your risk by having somebody else participate with you and effectively put in the cash that's required to close the loan. If you need 25% of $160 million, how much money do you need? How much money did the city give them? So the people who ponied up are strong, smart, capable, right? And they had no trouble taking on the debt because the city had already put in the cash, right? So, safety of investment. It's safe to invest for them to build. Until the park got started, until the Irons Nature Park, and the city began to expand the biking trails, this project didn't start. They had all kinds of reasons. I'm not saying that there are other reasons weren't good. It just happens to be coincidental that the city adds 150 acres of bike trails, right? And they start this project. So not only has the city committed all this money to public infrastructure along Sevier Avenue, not only has it created all these parks in South Knoxville, that these people who live in these units will want to use and ride their bikes and go walking, right? You've now created a situation in South Knoxville where you have a ring effect. Chapman Highway, Moody Avenue, Irons Nature Park, the river. And if you want to talk about gentrification, that's gentrification. I have used the term over the last 20 years, places like Parkridge are not being gentrified. They are being reoccupied by the people who moved here originally when the neighborhood was built. South Knoxville is a community of thousands of small houses that were factory houses, 800 to 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 950 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1 bath. And the people who have lived in that community, they don't have a prayer of living there. My view, I could be completely wrong. My view is they're on the way out now, and when that place gets open and humming, if you're paying $2,400 a month to live on the water, and you have a baby, and you like living there, how hard is it for you to move from a 1,400 square foot apartment to a 950 square foot house that you do an addition out the back of it on your 50-foot lot? Or go up, as Joe said.
By the way, Victor, you know that the waterfront redevelopment area is everything. And I insisted on this. All the way to the ridge tops, the entire view shed.
Right.
It's over a square mile.
And so what happens is, to this point, it only becomes more attractive over time for people to live in South Knoxville in this circled area. Now you can live beyond Moody and go up to the Kroger, the Woodlawn up there. You don't go past Stone Road. When you go past Stone Road, you got to go up over the hill. Nobody's going to drive over that hill on Friday night in the rain. They might Uber it. This is really important. If you really want to make money in real estate, look for a $10 Uber ride. And wherever you can ride for $10 or less, right, buy in that ring. Because what happens is you can take an Uber from Cherry Street and 5th Avenue, the west side, to the Lonesome Dove Cafe for $7.50. So if you're on Cumberland Avenue, it's $900 a bedroom to live on Cumberland in the new apartments. The fort has gone from about 350 to 400 to generally 450 to 600. So if you're a college student, and there's 5,000 more college students this year than there were 2 years ago that have come to the university campus. If you're one of those people, you now are being pushed out because you can no longer pay. You were paying $4, now it's $6 to live in the fort, you can't afford it. So where do you go? Well, Parkridge is easy, right? Lincoln Park is easy. So you wind up with all these college students who want to pay $400 a bedroom and have 700 credit scores, wanting to move into the Parkridge community because they can get on Cherry, they can drive around to the Publix and the Walmart on the west side of the campus, right? Get off on Kingston Pike right there, turn left, right in there. One red light, oh, you got it?
Yep.
2 red lights coming on Church Street.
Take the left.
Yeah.
Down.
So let's go back to risk. That was a brownfield that had been an Roman house industrial complex for 60 years or 70 years. An unbelievably polluted site. The developers came up with a plan, and the tenants, Publix, 2 good tenants, Publix and Walmart, to develop the site. So I don't remember the total amount of money that was involved, but let's just I'm making the numbers up. It's easy to find. Let's call it $100 million. How much money did they get from the city? If it was a $100 million project.
$25 million.
There you go. I think it was 20 million. But, and those numbers may not be right, but the 20% number is right. The 25% number, that is right. And again, it's not about the developers. They wouldn't have built the project. They wouldn't have done the deal if the city hadn't given them the opportunity to do it. But by the city giving them the opportunity to do it, it has changed the dynamic of everybody around them. And so many times the people that are living in the community do not see it happening to them. They don't understand the market forces that are shaping their lives, and they want to blame it on somebody else. And it's just the market forces that have been created by the actions of the politicians in making development go somewhere. So you can't fault Publix, they're doing a bang-up job over there. You can't fault Walmart for going over there, right? They've been great for the community, they've been great for the university. People should love the Publix. But it's changed the way the people live in East Knoxville. So what happens is that this leads us to any topic on any real estate question. We talked about market dynamic, we talked about what's going on, we talked about the millions of dollars that the city's invested in the South Knoxville waterfront and the dynamics. Yes?
Oh, no, go ahead, it's a question. Okay,
Yeah.
so where are they gonna go?
Where is it?
The people that are...
The people are going to go, it's like water. It's all about safety. So you'll find some people that will take a little more personal risk because they like the idea of adventure, right? And so they'll move into an area that's a little dodgy, but they're making a conscious decision to do that. But because they then have friends who come and visit who are also maybe more affluent, maybe also well educated, who decide, no, this isn't such a bad place. This is really super convenient. And so what happens is Parkridge has a real market driver in that it's anchored to the old city and it's anchored to the university and it's 5 minutes around, 12 minutes around on the interstate if you don't catch morning traffic or rush hour traffic. The whole dynamic of what's going on in Parkridge is being driven by market forces of people who don't live here, who are wealthier than the people who live here now, who are wanting to move into the area. And the more that the area begins to improve, it accelerates the speed of improvement for the adjoining property owners. Kim Trent used at the MPC meeting. Kim Trent is a wonderful person. She's the head of the Knoxville Preservation Society. Kim is someone who really believes in historic preservation. And she understands the dynamics of historic preservation. And she pointed to the concept of there's already been one house sold in Parkridge for $350,000 and multiple sales over $225,000, I think she said. So, to your point about the lot, a 50-foot lot is a lot of record in the city of Knoxville. If you are a home builder and you want to build one house, and you want to build a house where you can make a little margin, You'd want to build a $200,000 house on a $10,000 lot. Where can you buy a $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 lot and build a $200,000 house or $250,000 and Parkridge? And as soon as they start building those $250,000 houses, you are 2 or 3 steps away from $60,000 teardowns. And the reason is, in the way that the simple math that builders use, 20 to 25%, you cannot exceed 20 to 25% lot value to the price of the house you're going to build. So if you say a house sells for $300,000, the lot's worth $60,000, right? You cannot develop a lot in West Knoxville today for $60,000. Put it on the market and sell it for $60,000.
What's happening in Nashville right now?
We will never be Nashville. We will never be Nashville. We will never be Nashville. But it's going to get really expensive to live everywhere inside the city limits. The city of Knoxville is continuing to pass the topic of the meeting was the unintended consequences of a beautiful city. And I don't want to say the destruction, it's the elimination of affordable housing, because you have a wealthier dynamic that views itself to be safer living in a city that has strong regulations. And so as every community looks to invest, so what happens is, like an Inskip, and the reason that Inskip's got a problem is that there's no way to create additional value. There's no impetus where you can go in and say, we're going to build a $350,000, $400,000 house, because there's nothing that's driving what's going on in Inskip. It's sort of out there in the netherworld with great access, great transportation, but there's no driver. Parkridge has got a driver. Everything north of Magnolia has got a driver west of Cherry Street, just like Moody Avenue, Chapman, Imes Nature Park, and the river. Those are drivers for everything that's happening inside. It's a $7.50 Uber ride. That's a driver of demand. And the thing that really drives neighborhood value is when people begin putting signs in their yard that say neighborhood meeting at 7 o'clock. Because you have an involved neighborhood, the police show up. So, the first rule of investing, safety of your person and your children. Second rule of investing, the safety of your money. I'm going to buy something and I'm going to at least get my money back when I sell it. I'm going to have been able to live rent-free. I'll take that risk. And then the safety of the future. Look at all the people that are moving into this neighborhood. Look at all the people that are moving into these other neighborhoods. They're just like us. They're just like we want to be, right? They're all college educated. They're all this, they're all that. And you wind up with a situation that rents continue to increase because people feel safer paying more money in rent. They don't want to own, they want to live there for a little while. And it's better to live in this neighborhood than it might be to live in some other neighborhood that's a little further out, like North Hills. North Hills is a great, wonderful area, right? But it doesn't quite have the economic drivers that Parkridge has got. So you wind up with a whole range of topics. People, again, how people have the time, I just don't get it. I wish I had that kind of time. But what happens is you see people talking to each other, or they're talking about real estate investors, they're talking about this person, that person, making some kind of observation. And so the information that I'm sharing is the same exact information that I use for myself, that I've told other investors to use on a regular basis that come to our meetings. We encourage everybody to come. It doesn't cost to come to one of our REIA meetings, by the way. Don't want to tell anybody it's free and we don't supply pizza. We do pork sliders. So these are the typical questions. And so if anybody's got any question on anything in real estate, it doesn't make any difference what it is. We still have about 20 to 30 minutes. Yes?
Just wondering about the historical overlay. In reading your article that you've written, that you're passing around, it sounds like you're not in support of it. Can you talk about that some?
So if everybody, I printed up 4 of these, 5 of these, I don't remember, but everybody can pass them around and look at them. In 2002, I was approached by a house in Old North Knoxville. And the house, it was 95 or something like that when the historic district went into Old North. So it had been going on for about 5-7 years. They were really beginning to accelerate the way that it was moving. More involved people had restored their homes. More people were wanting to enforce it. And the person who owned the house at 1012 Thompson Place didn't want to own it anymore. He had problems with codes people. He had problems with the Historic Zoning Society. People were driving by and complaining all the time about the way his house looked. And
A nightmare.
so this is what it looked like in September of 2002. September 2007, 2001, sorry. And this is the side, they put a door in up in the attic and had a metal fire escape coming down the side. And so somebody that I'd known for a long time, who'd done a lot of business with over the years, and he said, Victor, I don't want this house anymore. Would you buy it from me for $30,000? So I did. And it had been a triplex. It had 3 meters on it. It would have been a triplex forever. But as I got into it, the neighborhood, when they found out somebody else owned it, they all wanted everybody wanted to be involved in, we wanted to be a single family house, we wanted to be this, we wanted to be that. And so I got started with the project with the intent of making it a really nice triplex, maybe a duplex. And so while we were doing the construction, while we were doing the work, I began looking at the historic zoning that would be in place, and I didn't do it correctly because I was in the process. I had a great architect who, if I had listened to him at the time, I would have gotten a federal tax credit. But I was already into the project, and we were already doing the demolition because the house was in terrible condition. Because once the upstairs unit had caught on fire, had a stove fire, and that person had left. The other 2 people who were living downstairs were both mentally challenged. Both of them walked to the, one was a CNA at the hospital, and the other one was did something with Kroger at the Fellini Kroger. So they needed to live there. Public transportation, close to work, but the neighbors didn't want them there. I'm buying the house, right? I'm going to spend some money to fix it up.
You say that.
So the way I make everybody move, I write them a check and tell them that their lease is not going to be renewed. And I hope we can find something else that'll give you some more money. So those people left. I subsequently spent $250,000 in that house. It was spectacular when we finished with it. So if you read the article, what happened was, you can flip through and look at some of the pictures. We were working on doing a demo, and we were all there, and the peak of the roof collapsed. There had been another chimney that had been taken out, everybody knows how many decades ago, and there was a back stairwell that had been jerry-rigged, and when we started doing demo work, there was no inclination at all that we were moving anything, and boom, this all comes down. So the whole center of the house collapsed. It destroyed, everything went to the ground. We wound up putting something like 45 floor jacks back in the house. It's a George Barber home, by the way. If anybody wants, if you want to write this down, this is, if you got 35 minutes to kill, you can Google "Nothing Changes in Real Estate, Historic Parkridge." And it should pop up the YouTube video on how Park Ridge was actually created. The land transaction that created Park Ridge. And some of you will find that interesting.
Can you say the third one more time?
Nothing changes in real estate. Historic Park Ridge. Or nothing new in real estate, nothing changes in real estate, even the way it is. But it should pop right up. And if not, you can go to YouTube, type in KnoxREIA, and it'll show, it's on our channel. But it's interesting as to how Park Ridge was created by a land transaction at the time that it was created, and who moved into Park Ridge at the time that it did, right?
So did you like the historic overlay that you were involved in over there?
So what happens is, as an investor, I can tell you with 100% certainty, I'll make more money. 100% I make more money. And I even think, let me tell you, I was telling Brian as we were driving over, there was no appraisal on this. The appraiser that did the appraisal for the bank when I bought it estimated the repairs at $56,000. My first number before the roof collapsed, my first number was $118,000. I'm more than double what the bank's appraisal was. So when I got into it, and all the neighbors, right down from Armstrong, and all the neighbors, all excited about the program. So we just moved forward with it. So, and when the roof collapsed, it showed the original cypress timbers that the house had been built with. So the people that built that house, it was a grand house when it was built. So you can see the original hallway that had been designed for air circulation, because there were the cypress walls, they were just right there. And so we began to open the house up, we began to modify the inside of it. If I listened to my really good architect, I would have not done anything against the architectural plans. But what happened was, as I began to modify the house, if you're going to change and meet the character of the historic overlay, you're spending 40, 50, 60% more money. In this house, and you can read it in the documents, I wanted to use smooth hardy plank, and they wouldn't let me. The cornices that are here we had all of those redone at the top of the columns, and they cost $700 a piece. I could have had the cornices from across the street, same people, $200. But because of this house, I couldn't do it at Knoxville. I had to use the more expensive cornices. In for a penny, in for a pound, next. So I converted, this is the master bedroom wing right here. So it's 16 by 22 master bedroom. There's a 10 by 14 walk-in, 10 by 16 walk-in closet. There's a walk-in shower. There's a soaking tub. 10-foot ceilings. It's a nice house.
You still have it?
No.
Did you sell it?
It became part of 2011. So it's I rented it for $2,500 a month from the time we got it finished. It was renting for $3,000 a month in 2009. It was in 2005 it made the Christmas tour that they did in Old North, and it was voted the house of the tour. Right? Every Christmas, I think about what happened to those people that I evicted out of. I paid to leave that house. I know they don't live in Park Ridge. I know they don't live in 4th and Gill. Right? So to your point, I can tell you, as an investor, I make more money. But as somebody who is interested in diversity of housing, who grew up in a 3-room apartment, I've been very blessed in life. So when I hear somebody say, I don't want those people in the neighborhood, I used to be one of those people.
Amen.
So I'm really sensitive to those issues. So I know without question that a historic zoning overlay will increase property values. It will bring more people into the neighborhood who are better educated, and by definition, they are wealthier and the people who live here today, because you're adding a set of federal government restrictions where there are no restrictions today. And no realtor can sell you a home in a historic district without telling you what the restrictions are, and you are therefore choosing to live in that neighborhood and live with those restrictions. And most people, the reason they're buying into that neighborhood is now it's safe. The government is setting up the restrictions, and everybody who moves in after me has got to live with those same restrictions. So by definition, everybody who moves in second is wealthy, is as smart or wealthier, as smart as they are, and wealthier because they're buying the houses from those people, right? So you have an accelerating timeline, and it depends on where you are in the United States. You'll hear, Knoxville, Tennessee is really fortunate to have Kate Graybill at the MPC over the historic zoning. She's really, really an excellent person to talk to and to work with. And you'll see and hear people talk about you can't determine whether it's historic zoning that is creating the change in the neighborhood or whether it's market forces. And it's hard to find somebody who says that market forces are the reason that they bought, or it was historic zoning the reason they bought. I can tell you as an investor, 3 years ago, it became really evident that this was a changing neighborhood because this historic zoning overlay was being talked about. It looked like it was going to go to a city council vote sometime or the other. There is no city in America that would vote against historic zoning. You're moving people into a neighborhood who are better educated and wealthier. What does that mean? They vote. They need fewer social services. There's fewer police. There's fewer fire calls. What city could possibly be against the expansion of historic zoning?
So you're talking about both and. You're talking about the market forces and you're talking about the policies, right? They're meshed together. They work together, and it's not one or the other. You can't have one without the other to have the effect that you're talking about. But what you're not really talking about is where did the mentally challenged people go? What policy implications are there for that? We know what to do to help out and accommodate the better educated and the more wealthy.
Right.
There's policy. There's a historic overlay. What's the overlay for those people?
There isn't one. And more importantly, there's not one to take this issue of affordable housing. So last year, this was a topic. This topic was the first part of last year. So 18 months ago is when we had this topic at the REIA meeting, right? That I'm talking about the unintended consequences of a beautiful city, the future of affordable housing. At that meeting, I said by the end of 2017, there'll be 1,000 people without a Section 8, who have a Section 8 voucher, who cannot find a place to live. I spoke with Debbie Taylor Allen a couple of weeks ago, before the meeting, 3 weeks ago, 774 people have got a Section 8 voucher and cannot find a place to live.
Already.
Already. Yes.
I know people that have a whole lot of money that won't touch a property in section, or with a historic overlay.
Oh.
Because of all of the restrictions that are so unnecessary. In fact, I know of Linden Avenue Baptist Church, for example, was trying to build a covered entryway for one of their handicapped people, and Kay made it a living HE double hockey sticks with regulations, and it costed that church, I don't know how many more thousands of dollars, because they wanted to tell them where to put the bushes, they wanted to tell them what kind of roof, they wanted to it was just horrible.
So to this point, right, those are regulations that everybody can read, that are visible for everybody. So if you're coming into an area, you're going to read those regulations and you're going to say, man, I really like that. I know that anybody.
But the people that are living there don't want it.
So again, I'm just talking about the result of what happens. So to the point of the people that are living there, that's the reason I say it's a 5 or 7 year cycle, that within 5 to 7 years of an overlay going in, the people that are generally living there don't live there anymore. Sometimes it might, and what happens is, by the way, this is really interesting because, first off, I always try to speak about something that I have firsthand knowledge of. So I have firsthand knowledge of historic preservation, historic rebuilding, and the kind of money that you can spend and why you should do it. Because, I mean, it's hard to buy anything in Old North Knoxville, right? So doing this house contributed to the overall value of everybody else's property. So you wind up with a situation that, as I mentioned, oh, there's my favorite picture of the house on the face. So I know that college students will move into an area that is historic because my daughter went to the College of Charleston. And she's my only daughter, so she's completely spoiled. She used to get hurt, get a little cut or something. We had, oh God, we took that to the emergency room. One of my boys get hurt, I'll throw some dirt on it. Let's go. No problem. Don't cry over that. Man, gone. So when she went to the College of Charleston, she wanted to live in the historic zone because it was close to the college. It was great architecture, interesting people living there. I really didn't care what it cost. She wanted to live there. She said she was safe, and she was, right? Close to school. So she moved from where I would like for her to have lived in a gated apartment community with 24-hour security, a great gym, right? Wonderful facilities, fantastic clubhouse. I couldn't understand why she would live there. So she now lives in Nashville on Elmington Park, which is on the west end, about 3 miles from Vanderbilt Hospital. 3 miles from Vanderbilt Hospital. And Elmington Park, there was an original Elmington Park, and it expanded back in the late 90s to a much larger area. So now, so it's all historic zone, right? But the original Elmington Park, I keep pointing this because it's a nice visual. The original Elmington Park now is the more historic Elmington Park, and you get charged a premium for living there because they were the original historic overlay. So they just did it next to my daughter's house. There was it's a 50-foot lot where she's renting over there, and where she's renting they're right across from the park. And there was a 50-foot house, a 50-foot wide lot that had been combined from 2 25-foot side lots from these other 2 houses. And this house, brick, nasty-looking yellow brick rancher was built in like 1975. It wasn't anything like anything else on the street. It became last year, it was a $400,000 teardown. $400,000. So when people say that historic overlay will slow the demolition of houses, it's only a momentary lull as more properties go through the cycle of the owners not being able to keep them and they move out. The rental properties become vacant, somebody sells the rental property, just like the house on Thompson. Somebody comes in and restores it because they have confidence in the community and they rent it for a rate of return that they're happy with an appreciation of value going forward.
So where do those people go?
That's the city's problem, isn't it? That can't be my problem.
I think as a rich real estate investor, it is your problem.
So to your point,
It is my problem.
So to your point exactly, I did a remodel to the house that you know about. It was about $60,000. I wanted to move people into the house. So there's a $2,000 refrigerator. I mean, this house is beautiful. I mean,
It's nice.
It's a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house, hardwood floors. I had all the hardwood floors refinished, 10-foot ceiling.
It was nice.
It's a $2,000 stainless steel refrigerator. I mean, thank you for the comment.
Is it still there?
It is.
It is.
And so I specifically looked for people who weren't in the system. I told Debbie that I was going to make an effort, but I didn't want to rent to Section 8. Specifically, I was looking for somebody that was working, that wanted to have a place that was really nice, better than someplace that they probably lived before. To your point exactly, I can afford to take less money and rent on that house and move on, right? So there were 4 people that had between them 3 kids, and they were all working, and they all came, they fell in love with the house. They wanted everything they could to get the house, to get in the house. And so They all agreed to pay rent, and it was $1,200 a month. And they move in, and almost immediately, her sister has some kind of problem. She's homeless, and she brings her, so she and her 3 kids come to live in the house also.
I think that was within a week.
Maybe it was. It was within a short period of time.
Yeah. We live across the street from
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I was wondering how you knew so much.
Yeah.
So,
If I'd have had the number, I'd have called him. Told him what's going on.
so to fast forward, I carried them as long as I could carry them, losing money, in the hopes that they would be able to find another job, find another roommate, find somebody that would do something. And all that was happening was the people who were able to pay were struggling to pay $300 or $500 or $700. Well, my cost on the house is significantly more money. So at some point, you've got to say enough is enough. So I told them, don't pay me any more rent, don't pay me any more money, just be out in 90 days. I've got 90 days, say whatever money you've got, find someplace else to move.
I don't know.
They moved in about 110 days, but they did move. The problem was, not only did I give up the rent, poor Trent, there would be no meeting tonight, by the way, if it wasn't for Trent Huggins. Trent is the guy that does everything. And so
He worked hard on that house.
he worked unbelievable to get that mess cleaned up.
It was a mess.
I've got pictures of it, and it's appalling to me, the condition they left the house in. I mean,
And isn't it appalling that those children lived in that? I mean,
and,
he talked about the smell from the refrigerator.
oh, it's unbelievable. And so not to be talking about the house, but it's a nicely done, furnished, I mean, there's the washer dryer, or like $1,200 or $1,500 washer dryer.
And they were still there?
Yeah, it's still there. The stove, I mean, the stove's, stuff, I mean, it's a $5,000 appliance package up in that house. So, to the point, at some point, enough is enough. So we get the house cleaned back up. I'm glad Trent works for free. So we got the house cleaned up, went back in, had to repaint the entire house, a couple $1,000. Had to redo the floors. So I tried one more time. Now, I could have rented it for $1,600 in one day. No question in my mind, one day. But I make one more effort to rent it to somebody who's, and where it would have been, we couldn't find this, I would have rented a Section 8 tenant a second time, but we couldn't find one who could move timely, who could qualify, and who had a $1,300 voucher. So, I tell Trent, let's try it one more time, we're going to advertise it for $1,200. One more time. So Trent handles all the showings. After me moving the other people in, he told me I wasn't allowed to show property anymore. So Trent shows the property, and anything he decides I'm good with. And the people that are in there now showed up. They have great credit scores. They have, they're wonderful, nice people. They take impeccable care of the house, right?
Good people.
Good people. And so I could have, if the rent had been $1,600, they would have still taken the house. But because I advertised it at $1,200, right? Because I'm looking for that working person where you get 3 or 4 working people together and they're working on Magnolia Avenue somewhere and they need to be able to walk to work. We advertised it for $1,200. You can't say, or at least I don't think I could ever say to someone that walks up that's got a credit score, that's female, that wants to pay the advertised rent, nope, you can't rent for that. We've got to charge you more money because you've got a good job and a college education, right? I don't think I can do that. I might try to do that, but Trent wouldn't let me.
I'm a bleeding heart for those children. I have worked with similar children for the last 6 years. And your story about your daughter in college, that was wonderful, but I know he's not a little boy anymore. But when he was a little boy, he was taken to downtown Knoxville, and he saw an escalator for the first time, and he was like, what is that? And when someone mentioned UT to him, he said, what's UT? He had no clue.
Right.
You know, and I guess I just want to know that the children that live in Parkridge now are going to be okay in the future.
Again, you're dealing with social issues. So, I've got opinions on any real estate topic. So,
But not children.
The problem
No,
is you can't fix all those problems.
You can't.
Nobody in here can fix all those problems.
But
and
is there no balance between the two worlds? You know what I mean?
so what happens is the city continues to add additional regulations to make it a more beautiful city. They add sign regulations. They add, and all sign regulations do is increase the number of chain stores and the number of high-value boutique stores.
Victor, you might want to mention how a lot of these housing issues are unintended consequences of the Dodd-Frank Act.
So, I was having a conversation with Brian. And Brian, by the way, is a shopping center developer. He does Walgreens locations, and he does big retail. I do little bitty deals. He does big deals. So, the Dodd-Frank Act, wanting to protect everybody in the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the Dodd-Frank Act says that, and I'm summarizing, that new residential construction is speculative investing by the bank, is a speculative loan by the bank. And they have to allocate more of their capital to do single-family speculative construction. So a home builder who wants to go out and build a spec house, it used to be that if they could buy a lot and they could borrow 75 to 80% of the anticipated sale price of the house. In today's world, they're borrowing about 45 or 50% of that value, and that cash shortfall eliminates the small builders. So all of the lot development in Knoxville, almost exclusively, is being either done by national builders, super regional builders, and/or families that have got the capital to do a 50-lot subdivision as a family. The small builders are almost without exception being eliminated everywhere in the United States.
But historically, 75 to 80% of the homes in America have been built by small builders.
Yeah.
So it's a complete reversal. And so the big builders create the big tract homes, they get the big efficiencies, build with speed, the cookie cutter look of all of the subdivisions. So if you're again, you're 30 years old, 32, 34, 35 years old, you've been living in an apartment, you've got a couple of kids, you like where you live, but you're looking for something a little unique, do you go buy a subdivision of 250 homes that have got 4 floor plans, or do you go to South Knoxville and buy one of those really cute bungalows?
Smithville.
Joseph?
I mean,
Go ahead.
you can blame the city. I mean, if you're gonna blame somebody, blame the city, because it's a simultaneously they could project or they could work on some type of plan for Section 8 housing.
Well, it always gets.
That's what I'm saying.
So what happens is you wind up.
And putting it on the transportation lines.
Well, they did that on that little subdivision on, never mind, I'll shut up.
But I mean, that's their obligation.
So,
Well, the place they ought to lose is Inskip.
well,
Yeah.
Inskip would have been perfect, quite seriously.
Well, they sold them.
But you wind up with a situation
Right there, Central.
where there's 4,000 Section 8 vouchers in the city. 4,000, right?
University.
And you've got 20% of the Section 8 vouchers cannot find a place to live. That, by definition, is a crisis. And then you've got all these places that people want to do more, but you can't get more density zone in the city or in the county. I mean, you try to, all of southwest Knox County, 75,000 people from South Peters, where the Walgreens is, Kingston Pike, all the way to the river, to the county line. 75,000 people in southwest Knox County. If it were a city, it would be, I think this is still correct, the wealthiest city in the state of Tennessee as a city. there is not one piece of property in that entire area zoned for medium density residential. Not, my 3.7 acres, but outside of my 3.7 acres, nothing is zoned. So you couldn't build a fourplex, a duplex, you can't do it, yes.
Some of these other cities that have become more beautiful, like Nashville, Charlotte, Asheville, and have gone through the historical overlay and the market factors, what has happened to the unintended consequences, the people that live
They
there?
have no place, they wind up being homeless. So Nashville Nashville is a little different because of the way the commuter cities work. It builds out a little bit more, they got a little larger bus line. But they wouldn't approve a bus transit system a few years ago because they didn't want those people riding through their neighborhood. That's what people actually said to me. So the answer to your question is they become, they move in with friends, they move in with relatives, they live in a shelter, or they become homeless. Yes?
Something that I haven't heard mentioned yet, and it's not on that list, of course, there's lots of things that are on the list, you don't intend it to be a comprehensive list, but, and it may come up with the recoding of, Knoxville zoning code, but that's ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and a lot, it's another hot topic, it's gonna be a tough one, but.
Everybody understand what accessory dwelling units are? That's it.
Bylaw houses or.
Yeah. Garage apartments,
Nanny, granny.
where you have an apartment up over the
Apartment.
garage. I can tell you that gets to be a really hot topic because picking and choosing with the zone that we have now. So you'll hear people talk about they're going to do form-based codes. As form-based codes begin to spread out across the communities, what people in the communities don't understand about form-based codes, they don't really, just like I'm talking about 2,400 jobs at $80,000 a year, nobody in the room but one knew about it, right? And how that's going to impact Knoxville. Neighborhoods hear form-based codes. People might have heard about the uranium processing facility, but to say it's going to create 2,400 direct jobs, 5,000 other jobs, right? What impact does that have? A lot. Form-based codes, everything that's inside that building, as long as it looks good, right? It matches the form that the people have picked, someone else has picked for the street. Anything you want to do inside that building is absolutely possible. So as long as it's not toxic or hazardous of some way, you can do whatever you want to in the building. You can have a sewing, you can have a sewing warehouse, you can have retail, you can have restaurants, you can have anything. And it can be 8 stories tall.
Well, that's pure form-based code, though. You can hybridize it, you can restrict usage to some degree or not. There's a lot of choices there. I was in Denver recently, and
I love it.
they have, they've allowed ADUs, and even in historic zones, now they have controls, lots of controls.
So to follow up, again, it goes back to the point of what is personal responsibility, right? So if I'm wanting to rebuild an asset base, and I'm wanting to create, I'm willing to take risk, and I'm willing to do the work that is required to understand what the rules are, and I'm willing to take all of my chips every single day and bet red or black. So I take all my chips every day, red, black, red, black. And I begin to make money with the decisions that I've made and the risk that I've taken. At what point do I begin to say, well, I don't need to take any more risk, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to take any more risk, I'm not going to create any more housing. I'm not going to take any more risk, I'm not going to remodel any more houses so that the houses improve. The more regulations that you have on property, the harder it is for people who do not have a base of income to be able to accumulate the money that it takes to be able to live in that neighborhood.
Exactly.
And the situation that the city is creating is that there's no the subsidies that the city has for housing create a situation that more poor people live in a neighborhood. They buy a lot, they redo the house, they give somebody a grant for $50,000 or $60,000 to move into a new house. Beautifully designed, fantastic home, $160,000, $170,000, but the city gives the person moving in $60,000 so they can qualify for a $95,000 or $100,000 loan. So you've got a $160,000 house to build, selling for $100,000 with a $60,000 subsidy to a poor person. They can't, and then it's a struggle for them to afford the payment for the $100,000. But now not only have you moved another poor person into the neighborhood, you now have destroyed the value opportunities for the other houses because the appraisal comparable, right, going to go down. So you wind up with a situation that if you want to build a similar house at market rate, you can never get an appraisal. Real estate housing is based on values which have occurred in the past. 60 days ago, 90 days ago, 4 months ago. Comparable values do not have to be in the same school district. They can be different. Basically, appraisers take, they start with a round peg, which is the subject property, and they look for other round pegs, and if they don't find another round peg, they start taking different kinds of pegs and rounding, changing the edges of it until it becomes round. Right? Make an adjustment for this or make an adjustment for that. But the bottom line is, every judgment that they're making is on something that has occurred in the past. Every appraisal that is for a resident for a house is based on information that's in the MLS system. So you're not going to believe this, but realtors make mistakes when they enter that data. And so the house is calculated the wrong square footage. You wind up with the problems of helping the poor exacerbate the problems of being able to turn a neighborhood around. If you were really wanting to help the poor, you would begin buying houses in any neighborhood in Knoxville that you could buy for $250,000 or $300,000, and letting 4 or 5 working people, 6 working people who are sharing 3 cars live in that house. But the city's passed bills against that.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Asked me to
Yeah,
talk tonight just for a minute. This client, it's in Athens, which is, I know, not a desirable part. It's in the better part of Athens. If you're interested in the north side where the farms are, it's really nice. She bought this house 3 years ago. It was an owner finance, and she put $15,000 down. She paid $2,800 a month faithfully for 3 years. Her intention was to finance the house at the end and buy it. Well, she lost a business opportunity that she had down in Florida, and she filed a loss on her taxes. So this changed her DTI, and she can't get a loan to buy the house. So she's got like till the end of the week to get a contract on the house. And I got about 5 things here on it. It's 4,371 square feet. It's a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath, 4-car, 2 double-car garages, 7 acres of land. It's got a pool. It's landscaped. No renovations needed. Everything in the house has been totally upgraded. It's a beautiful house. They had it listed. Zillow has it for $599. She listed it for $550, and I have until the end of the week. She'll take $499. So if there's any investors that want to buy the property, they can rent. She's out of it. They can rent it for $2,500 or whatever until you can sell it for what it's worth. I mean, it's close to $600,000. So if anybody's interested, please come grab one, and we can see if we can make it happen. I told her I'd mention it tonight. I said, I know time is short. We only have a couple of days to do this, or she's going to be completely lost all of her investment. If I can get somebody tonight that says they at least want to see it and are interested, then we can buy time. If I can't get anybody tonight, I told her I'd call her tomorrow. If I can't get anybody in the meeting that at least wants to see the house and is interested in it, then she's gonna be out. Okay. Yeah, you can reach me.
I was gonna recommend, I didn't mean to step out with the
No problem.
I mentioned this in one of the posts, but to your issue of housing, where people live, how are they going to live? I recommend this book right here. The book is Evicted. It's about 6 families that live in Milwaukee, about the same size as Knoxville, and what goes on in Milwaukee, and how they live. It's if you read Hillbilly Elegy, it's got a lot of play. This tells you where the people who are in Hillbilly Elegy, it's really interesting to see how the 3 books work together. Hillbilly Elegy, Evicted, and a book called White Trash. But if you really want to understand the problem with what we're talking about tonight, this guy's name is Matthew Desmond, E-S-M-O-N-D. And he is one of those people that when he writes, he lives with the people. So it's actually from his own accounts of living with the people over a 2-year period of time. And it deals with these very issues. Where do people live? How do they live? And why do they live that way? So it's a really, really good book for people that are interested in these kind of housing issues to have a grasp of and a grip on. Everybody else have the pizza they wanted? Yes.
Quick question about comps. You mentioned how residential, how they're estimated from prior sales, about 6 months or so.
In a perfect world, they want them within 30 days, 6 months, yeah.
How does that work with commercial as far as getting the value or trying to get a feel for the value before you purchase? Because there may not be comps for the last 6 months.
Commercial property is almost always valued on the income that it's currently generating or the anticipated income that it's going to be generating. So you can have a Dollar General store that compares to a Dollar General store anywhere in the United States because it's Dollar General, right? But if you look at like a little strip shopping center, it's got a beauty parlor, a nail salon, and a tattoo parlor, you can only value it on what that income is from those tenants as to what kind of rate of return you'd be looking for.
For other properties, not the ones you're looking at.
Right. So
what's the people in like the Parkridge that don't know this overlay, or do they not have a recourse?
if they don't show up at the city council meeting, it'll get approved without question. So if you are against the overlay, you need to absolutely positively be in contact with the city council people, let people understand why you don't support it.
I've nothing, we're building lawn sales, so we're doing the subsidized house.
Before I forget, everybody, unsolicited plug. This is Rick Mixon, one of, if not the best architect in Knoxville.
So, but this is with the Housing Development Corporation, nonprofit, builds and sells for low and moderate income. So our appraisals are, we're doing 110, half the sale for 110 to get the low and moderate income.
Right.
What they're paying for subsecond half, about $650 a month. If you do other utility bills, only $100 a month average. And so, city only subsidizes it for $30,000. So we can sell them for 110 because of the energy feature. And we have about 137 in it. And so that's, well, maybe that's where the other 30 But when our houses sell, they are the appraisal.
They are the appraisals.
Yeah, because nothing else in the neighborhood is worth that.
Right. This is Rick Mixon. He's an architect and a longtime friend. So he knows more about building, and he runs it, showed up, and he does great work. Brilliant guy.
How much do you pay him to sit?
But what happens is, well, he's got a nonprofit that builds these new houses that are beautiful houses. And it just becomes really difficult for those houses to ever, they create their own comp, but you can't move another house forward based on that comp. Because it's a subsidized sale.
But do they not count the second mortgage as in the bag?
I have a question that maybe he can address. I called Kay about 2 weeks ago. We are looking to change our insurance coverage, change companies.
Right.
And so I'm getting estimates from people and that sort of thing. And one of the real estate, or one of the insurance people I talked to asked me, well, are you wanting like historical insurance to where, and it was a greater amount, of course, to meet all the
Lot
historical
more
bills.
money.
And I said, well, I don't really know what I want. And she said, so I called Kay just to get a kind of an idea. And Kay told me that, like, if we were to have a fire and lost everything on our lot,
Right.
we would only be allowed to rebuild on 30%. Like the dwelling can only cover 30% of the lot.
Yeah, you'd never be able to rebuild.
Which,
And-
looking at our duplex,
I meant to point this out earlier, it's,
That's horrible.
the historic zoning overlay, one of the unintended consequences is you can't get it, a lot of companies will not write insurance.
Yeah.
So you wind up being limited to the coverage that you're going to carry. And the reason is that what you have, so let's go back to comparable values. I don't want to get too weedy here. But comparable values are for existing structures selling with existing structures. Everybody's heard about the classic examples, the fires were up in Gatlinburg, where they can't rebuild, right? Because they've got to meet the new current codes. Sonoma County, California, out there in Santa Rosa, there are about 5,800 residences that were burned completely, there's nothing left. They were interviewing a Farm Bureau agent who has about 400 homes insured, and he said that between 300 and 350 of his houses will not be able to be rebuilt because they don't have enough insurance to meet the new California code. They had enough insurance to if theirs was the only house to be damaged, they would have had enough insurance, right? Because they were comparing to the other houses in the neighborhood, but you're not going to be able to rebuild in that neighborhood now with any of those houses because of the California code. So there's going to be 4,000 or 5,000 people that live in Santa Rosa that aren't going to live there anymore because they're about to be, all that land's going to be bought up by other people because they've changed all the zoning codes. There won't be any more manufactured, I can assure you, there will not be another 100-unit manufactured home community in Santa Rosa. Right? So it's the same issue. The historic zone puts on additional unknown future costs.
Exactly.
And you are insuring against an unknown cost.
it's also stating, if I understood it correctly, that I absolutely cannot rebuild my 4-square duplex or even a 4-square house that's gonna look anything like what I've lost.
No.
And I'm like, well, how is that right?
That's, again, these are new zoning laws that are in place. It would be the new zoning regulations that would be in place. And it's not a question of whether it's right or not, it's what the new laws are.
That's not the new zoning, that's the existing zoning. R1A gives you 30% off.
Lot coverage. So with the zoning that's in place, which was a change in the zoning prior to when the R1A zoning went in. So your house was built at a time that there were lots of duplexes along Fifth Avenue.
But there's, in the zoning, there's some substandard lots that are less than 75 feet wide. You still have to have the same lot coverage,
Yeah,
but setbacks change.
But it's still, you can't have more than 30% lot coverage.
Can you get a?
Yeah, and in the city, that means roof area.
Yeah, and so what happened, and so the city last year, or this year, changed the driveway code. So you can no longer have a gravel driveway, or the driveway has to be pavers or concrete. So, you know, it adds $3,000 or $4,000 to the cost of just adding a paver driveway, concrete driveway. So that was told to me by somebody who no longer builds in the city. They used to build in the city, and they don't build in the city anymore. So I don't want to run everybody up, but we've got to clean up.
Well, thank you for your time.
So if anybody's got any questions, I'm easy to reach, I'm sure.